It was just after dawn on a quiet suburban street in Minnesota when a neighbor made a chilling discovery. A car sat parked awkwardly at the curb, its door slightly ajar, the morning dew still clinging to the windshield. At first, it looked like someone had simply forgotten to close it. But when the neighbor walked closer, what they saw would forever change the neighborhood's sense of safety. Inside was the lifeless body of a 32-year-old woman, later identified as Emily Harper, a young marketing executive known for her warm smile and her love of weekend hikes. She had been brutally murdered. Her phone was missing, her purse was gone, and there were no signs of forced entry or struggle nearby. It was as though she had been taken by surprise, silenced, and left behind like discarded evidence. Police quickly arrived and sealed off the scene. Detectives examined the car, dusted for fingerprints, and canvassed the neighborhood. But nothing pointed to a suspect. No witnesses had seen anything suspicious that night, and no surveillance cameras picked up Emily's final moments. The case was unsettling for investigators. Murders in the suburbs usually left some kind of trail. An angry partner, a bitter coworker, or a disgruntled friend. But in Emily's life, everything appeared clean. She had no enemies, no history of abusive relationships, and no involvement in crime. By all accounts, she was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Still, detectives knew better. Someone had wanted Emily gone, and whoever did it had carefully planned the crime. But how do you catch a ghost? The digital age of crime. The first days of the investigation were frustrating. Detectives retraced Emily's last known steps. She had left work late the night before, picked up takeout from a local restaurant, and driven home. According to her co-workers, she seemed tired but not distressed. Investigators scoured through CCTV footage from businesses along her route. Hours of blurry videos showed headlights, passing cars, and dark figures, but no clear evidence of her abduction or an attack. Then they turned to the one thing no criminal can fully erase: the digital trail. Phones, laptops, GPS systems, and search engines have become silent witnesses in modern investigations. And Emily's case would prove that the internet knows more than we think. When detectives subpoenaed Emily's phone records and bank accounts, they discovered that her last known activity had been sending a quick text to a friend at 9:37 p.m. After that, silence. Her credit cards hadn't been used, her phone was turned off, and her social media showed nothing unusual. For weeks, the case seemed frozen. The media began to lose interest. Some speculated it was a robbery gone wrong. Others whispered about a stalker, but the lack of evidence frustrated everyone involved. That's when investigators decided to look not at Emily's data, but at the data of those around her, a breakthrough in the cloud. With a warrant in hand, detectives dug into potential suspects in Emily's circle. They interviewed friends, family, and co-workers. Among them was Daniel Briggs, a quiet IT technician who had occasionally worked with Emily's company as a contractor. He seemed cooperative when first questioned, but investigators noted he appeared nervous, too nervous for someone who claimed to barely know her. On paper, Daniel had no criminal history, but as detectives expanded their search, they made a chilling discovery. Google servers held a record of his online activity, and what they found would unravel everything. Late one night, investigators combing through his Google search history found queries that made their blood run cold. How to get rid of DNA evidence? How long does it take for police to trace a car? Best ways to silence someone quickly. These searches weren't random. They had been made days before Emily's murder. The cloud, something Daniel thought was private, had betrayed him. The trap tightens. Armed with this digital evidence, detectives began to build their case. They pulled Daniel's cell tower records, which placed him near Emily's neighborhood the night she disappeared. They found surveillance footage of a car matching his parked a few streets away. And when they interviewed him again, his story began to crumble. But detectives knew they couldn't rush. They needed airtight proof. Search histories alone weren't always enough in court. Defense attorneys often argued they were just curiosities or research. The police needed to tie Daniel's searches directly to Emily's murder. And soon they would. Detectives were stumped. There were no fingerprints on the weapon, no forced entry at the victim's home, and no clear motive pointing to anyone. The crime scene was strangely clean, almost as if the killer had rehearsed it. But in today's world, silence rarely exists. Every action leaves a digital shadow, and this killer had no idea their shadow was already betraying them. Investigators began to piece together the victim's last days, combing through phone records, text messages, and security footage. Nothing jumped out. Then, one officer suggested something unconventional. Check the suspect's Google search history. What they found was chilling. At first, the queries seemed harmless. How long does DNA last on clothes? Then they escalated. How to hide a body without getting caught? Can police trace deleted searches? And best time of night to kill someone. Each keystroke told a story more damning than fingerprints ever could. The digital footprint painted a timeline of obsession, planning, and execution. While neighbors described the suspect as quiet and polite, their online presence told another story. A mind unraveling, desperate for answers the internet should never have provided. Detectives realized they weren't just solving a murder. They were unraveling a killer's diary, written not in ink, but in Google searches. And the deeper they dug, the more horrifying the truth became. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. The suspect sat stiffly in the interrogation room, arms crossed, eyes locked on the table. Detectives had tried the usual questions. Where were you that night? Who can confirm your alibi? But the answers were slippery, rehearsed. Then one detective slid a folder across the table. Inside wasn't a murder weapon or a photo of the victim, but something far more powerful. Screenshots of search history. Why would someone look up how to clean blood from carpet without bleach? The detective asked, voice calm but cutting. The suspect shifted in their seat, lips tightening. No answer. Page after page, the detectives laid out the searches, typed at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., all within hours of the murder. It wasn't just evidence. It was a confession in real time, typed into a search bar the suspect thought was private. You don't have to tell us what happened, another detective said, leaning forward. You already did. Google told us everything. The suspect's mask cracked. Their face flushed. Their hands trembled. They tried to laugh it off, claiming curiosity, claiming it was just research. But the timestamps lined up too perfectly with the victim's death. Every question they had whispered into the void of the internet was now echoing back, louder than any alibi could shout. And in that moment, the suspect realized the awful truth. They hadn't been caught by a witness or a slip-up at the crime scene. They had been caught by themselves, by the secrets they left in the cloud. But the most damning discovery was still to come. Investigators thought they had seen the worst of it. The searches for cleaning blood, disposing of evidence, even how long does DNA last were damning enough. But then the forensic techs dug deeper. Buried in the suspect's search history, hidden between cooking recipes and weather updates, were queries that froze the room. How to make a murder look like an accident? How much cyanide is lethal? How to erase GPS data from phone? And then, the one that made even the most seasoned detective shift uncomfortably in his chair. How long will kids remember if they see something traumatic? The meaning was clear. The suspect hadn't just been panicking after the crime. They had been planning, rehearsing, mapping out every possible outcome before the victim even died. This wasn't impulse. This was premeditation. Detectives exchanged glances. The case had shifted from tragic to chilling. The suspect hadn't simply lashed out in a moment of rage. They had calculated, tested, and consulted the internet as though it were a co-conspirator. And perhaps most disturbing of all, the searches suggested they weren't planning for just one crime. The history revealed multiple trial runs, hypothetical scenarios, different ways to kill, different ways to hide. The cloud wasn't just exposing a murderer. It was exposing a mind that had rehearsed killing long before anyone realized danger was coming. The investigation had reached its peak. Detectives now had a chilling portrait of a suspect who had practically written a diary of their intentions through search history. But one final discovery would close the case for good. A search from the exact night of the murder caught everyone's attention. How to clean blood off carpet quickly before police arrive. The timestamp aligned perfectly with the window of the victim's death. There was no wiggle room left, no chance for coincidence. The suspect wasn't just curious about crime or covering tracks. They were actively scrambling in real time as their victim lay dying. It was the digital equivalent of a smoking gun. When the evidence was presented in court, the defense tried to argue that searches could mean nothing, that maybe they were just research or morbid curiosity. But the jury saw what investigators had seen all along. The timeline, the precision, the sheer volume of incriminating queries. Each search was like a breadcrumb, leading prosecutors step by step through the suspect's plan, execution, and aftermath. Google's servers had unknowingly logged every sinister thought, and now those thoughts were on full display. The verdict came swiftly: guilty. The suspect's fate was sealed not by fingerprints or eyewitnesses, but by their own fingertips on a keyboard. As the courtroom emptied, one detective reflected on how the case had unfolded. Once upon a time, killers could hide behind lies and alibis. But now, every click, every keystroke, every whispered curiosity typed into a search bar could become evidence. The cloud had become the new crime scene. And in this case, it didn't just hold secrets. It held the truth. White heavy check mark that closes the story. This conclusion ties together suspense, the digital trail, and the dramatic courtroom finish, while leaving viewers hooked on the chilling thought that their own search history could one day betray them. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell.